because you can't write me a check and deposit $1 million, you are broke in my eyes.
So have Calvin Williams Jr. here of Freeman Capital. And just real quick, can I just briefly go over sort of how we met? I'm going to talk about this at the app launch too, but we actually have never yet met in person, right? We got to know each other through GroupMe, right? In like 2014 or something like that.
Mhm.
And we've just stayed
Mhm.
in touch because we've both been interested in
Yep.
finance. But these questions will actually help me get to know you better too and about what you're doing, even though I've known you, invested in
Mhm.
the company and the like.
Yep.
So why don't you just start off by just telling us sort of where you're from and how you grew up?
Yeah, so I am born and raised in Maryland. Started my first company when I was in like 11 or 12, just kind of cutting grass. And I was like 14, and I started building church websites and small business websites. And then I went to the North Carolina A&T State University down here in North Carolina. Started my first real company then, and it grew to be a top 25 web development firm in the region. And when I exited that business by selling my part to my partner, I thought that I had a little bit of money until I went and tried to find a wealth manager. And he basically was like, because you can't write me a check and deposit $1 million, you are broke in my eyes.
Tell us really briefly about that tech background that you have, though, and a little bit about how that's helped you in Freeman Capital.
Yeah, so and again, I have to throw it back to my dad because he saw that technology was going to be a big deal. So we were very fortunate to where he like hustled up and even got us like one of the first Mac Lisas, the ones from the ad. I was, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old, so I was around computers at a very young age. Even so that I can remember when American Online was nothing more than just text and black and white pictures. Like it was super early stage. And so I was building websites at that time, and I was even recruited by the Department of Defense at 17 to build top secret government programs. And so I've always had a deep experience with technology and with investing because I first started investing at like 15 or 16 via share builder. This was during the dot-com boom. And it was like the first time that you could go online and like buy shares of companies.
You have been well versed in other people's products. Why don't you just tell us kind of what is Freeman Capital's actual technical solution that
Yeah.
you think adds value to the market?
Yeah, so it is really crystal clear here is that a lot of the products in this space are very good at doing one of two things: organizing your finances or making it easier to buy and sell online. Like that Freeman Capital does is that we are unique in that we provide wealth building actions to help customers increase their net worth within their first 30 days, 90 days, and 1 year. Our focus is different, is on comprehensive net worth improvement. We have helped customers figure out better ways to pay off their student loans, their debts, increase their credit score faster so that they can buy a home, and of course, do investments through the market, but also provide insight on how to invest outside of the market as well. Because our whole goal is tied to increasing the net worth of our customers, not just organizing or making it easier or cheaper to buy a stock.
So, how then did you talk to investors and convince them that customers would use Freeman Capital?
Just from organic content marketing, that grew to be over 1,000 people. And so the very first friends and family investors that we had, one, they knew me because they had seen that I was student body president of my college. I had launched my firm, so they had seen a bit of my track record. In the beginning, we were thinking that we would be like some sort of diversification play to help people increase their portfolio. And so we started in currency and futures, which is a really niche market. But the crazy thing was that we still had people who were signing up, who were investing with us on that service. And the thing that we learned was that they were like, Calvin, we love this idea. I want you to manage all of my money and put it all in the market. We realized that we need to do more. And so that's when this iteration of Freeman Capital came around. And so each time we took a step and got more traction, it was easier to share and it was easier for the investor to understand where we were going.
The pitch went well. Now, kind of the flip side of that coin, teams and doing things by yourself. Why did you not bring on a co-founder?
Over $150,000 to get the business to this point, plus outside investment as well. And so, because in the beginning it was literally just me, and then the beginnings of the team, we didn't have someone that joined at the very beginning. So that's really the only reason. But my leadership team, they are virtually like co-founders because they grind and work on this like they were there in the beginning. And so even though they may not have been there at the very beginning, they still get the same respect and thankfulness from me because they basically are like my co-founders.
So, speaking of team and growing and using the assets that you have, what would you do if you had an infusion of $1 million in funding today?
Well, first I would call my mom and tell her that I made it. But once that celebration is over, then we really have to get to work, because when you get infusions of cash, that increases your level of expectation, and your level of delivery needs to increase. We would allocate that into three main buckets. You would have around 60% of that would be allocated to marketing and growth tactics, ways to acquire the customer. The work that we have done to date lets us identify who the customer are, what their demographic and psychographics are, and how much it costs to reach them. Then around 30% of that million would then be allocated to advancing our technology platform. It's from front-end applications to improvements in our back-end automation to investments in the artificial intelligence that we aim to build. And the remaining 10% would be in company overhead, which is just some of the administrative and corporate things and compliance costs that we have to cover as well.
We noticed that as well. This isn't a question that we sort of on the list, but could you just talk a little bit more about how you're able to, not the secret sauce or anything, but just how much of an advantage it is to have lower expenses and how you're able to accomplish that with technology?
Yeah, so it is a game changer when you are headquartered down in North Carolina. And this is generally not a startup hotbed like New York or Boston or San Fran. And so you kind of get forced into doing everything different. And so our whole team is remote. That's a cost saving. Then we use technology for ourselves, the product delivery service. It just shifts your focus. And so what it does, especially for early stage startups, is that it keeps our burn rate, that's the money that you spend each month, it keeps our burn rate low, which helps us to extend our runway even when we haven't raised the millions of dollars. So it literally becomes the lifeblood of the company, being as efficient as possible with your dollars by using technology.
Solid strategic advantage. So, what's the most profitable piece of advice that you've received since you first started building that landing page?
She really pushed on understanding, what is this product going to do that is going to be better than everyone else? She harped on that for like 6 or 9 months. And, because it's one thing to have a vision of you want to do X, but then because of marketing, they need to know exactly what they're going to market. And so with, you'll a CEO will be up here, but then marketing are going to drop you right down here. Because, okay, what exactly makes us better? And so
A bit of a different question. Name an artist that most inspires your work.
his name is Toby Nwigwe. He's based out of Houston, Texas. He's an independent artist. The guy has crazy skills in rapping. I first saw him on Sway in the Morning. The reason why I picked him is because he's independent. He hustle hard. Like every week, he put out a music video for like a year. And so that's just like dedicated work when like no one was watching him. And now he's starting to blow up. I feel like that is kind of where we are as well, because we've been doing it independent. We haven't gone down the big accelerator route or the big funding route. We've just been grinding and just been doing it day by day by day.
It's a bit of a more personal question and kind of related to what I asked earlier, but how do you balance having a committed relationship and a committed relationship to your business?
Add that I have a son too. My son 4 years ago that I really began to accept this, is that my journey may not look like everyone else's. Once you stop trying to compare your journey to, an Elon Musk or whomever else that is out there, whether they're crushing it, and just accept that my life and my journey is different, always feel pulls, there's from wife, there's from family, there's from my son, and from business and from work. You always feel pulls.
Well, how does being from the Charlotte area or North Carolina generally give you an advantage, do you think, in the startup scene? I know you mentioned that it may not
Yeah.
have the same as New York and San Francisco or Boston, but how does it give you an advantage?
So I think the advantage is that we are forced to be extremely gritty out here. I was just talking to another fintech startup out in the Bay, and she was saying that she actually wished that she wouldn't have raised money as early as she did, because it put expectations on her firm that, as she's been trying to figure out her path, it's then, she's having to deal with a big institutional investor and how things have changed. Positive of not having a lot of huge institutional investors that are local is that the companies here, we get to a maturity point of really focusing on how to be profitable at a lower scale. And then when we get capital, we're able to scale, and we know who our customer is, what our product is, and all of that, because we've had to spend so much time to nail that, because it had to work. Like, because we didn't have millions in the bank over the last few years, we had to be judicial with every dollar to make sure that it worked and got an ROI. And now, as we are raising funds, it means that we can now put that money to deploy hopefully more efficiently, because we've already gone through these lessons of being super gritty, super judicial with these funds to make sure that they pay off.
To that end, if Freeman Capital could only keep one feature, what would that feature be?
To sign up and get a wealth building action within the first interaction with our service. And then they find out, like, oh, the best way for me to build wealth is not just to invest, but to pay off these super high credit cards interest rates, so that my net worth will be higher by the end of the end of the year.
So, name a pivot, something that you changed that you think saved your company.
So the biggest pivot is going from currency trading to wealth building actions and wealth management. Because so just as a bit of a backstory, when I exited my first startup, the web development studio, I began to build algorithms that would trade the market at night. And so I thought that was cool, and everyone would want that. And some folk did, but then really, like, realizing that it's not about the investment, but it's about the person, and changing their behavior to position them to make wealth. That pivot from technically focused on this is one investment product to this is a person, and let's help them. That pivot has saved everything.
Which communities have been sort of the most helpful in growing your brand and your vision?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest community, which is gonna sound probably too large, but it is the online groups of people of color that are professionals and crushing it, right? Because the reality is that as people of color, we know that financial institutions, they may take our money, they may take our services. I mean, they may provide us services, but this diversity and inclusion is not infused with the companies that we serve. I mean, there are still instances today of large banks and investment houses who are discriminating against people of color, and we still know it and see it. And so people have heard of Freeman online and they shared it. That has been the biggest support ever. I mean, the fact that we were able to get over 8,000 signups online without spending any money in marketing, just from word of mouth. They felt a connection to what we are trying to build. And without them, we wouldn't be here.
Okay. Glad that Freeman's doing so well. Tell us, how do you think d-tech.fund could help your company?
What d-tech.fund is doing is that it is creating a platform and a space for founders like me to come and share our story. That is one of the biggest things that people of color and founders of colors need, is a shot. We need a shot, we need access, and of course, we need funding. With a d-tech fund, It's a opportunity for us that is carved out just for us to be our best. And that is literally all that we have ever asked for. Just give us equality, give us a chance, and hear us out.
Do you want to run a billion-dollar company? Why or why not?
Of course, yes. I do want to run a billion-dollar company, but not because it is a billion-dollar company. I want to run a billion-dollar company because that means we are helping millions of people. We are growing to scale to make that impact, as well as return value back to our shareholders.
So as you know, at our app launches, after your pitch, your speech, if you will, there's a Q&A session,
Yes.
and it usually gets pretty good. I mean, people are smart. They're asking some really good questions. It's always fun. It's one of my favorite parts,
Yeah.
other than the pitch. But my question is, which question would stump you if it was asked at your app launch party?
Because I've definitely been stumped in these types of interfaces before. But the thing is that once you've been stumped once, then you go back and you try and cover that up so that you can understand it. So the next time you're asked, you are ready. I would have to say that this question is stumping me already, and it is the unexpected question that you have never framed of. Those are the ones that always stump me the most. When it gets to the business and the metrics and our vision, I'm confident there. But it's when you get that a question where you're like, I never even had that thought. Those are the ones that get you the most.
Valuable thing that Freeman Capital does for its customers.
So the most valuable thing that Freeman Capital does is that it can enable anyone that is making either $1 or $1 million to come onto a platform, get connected to a service and a community, and then get your specific wealth building actions for you to take that can help to increase your net worth now. Investing to saving to credit cards, and then we help to protect you to make sure that you are covered in terms of any gaps or things that you're overlooking.
Nice. So thank you so much for that interview, Calvin. We're sort of off the clock.